I never thought my life would change because of a collision on the ski slopes. Running a struggling restaurant in Little Rock was enough drama, but fate had other plans that winter morning. Table 6 sent back the duck confit. Again. My sous chef's words made me want to throw my perfectly crafted sauce against the wall. Instead, I took a deep breath, adjusted my chef's coat, and tried to ignore the growing pit in my stomach. 3 months of declining reservations had turned my dream restaurant into a nightmare. Fine, comp their meal, I muttered, knowing each comp was another nail in my restaurant's coffin. That evening, after another disappointing service, I made an impulsive decision. I needed a break. The next morning found me driving to the nearest ski resort, desperate to clear my head. The morning air was crisp, and the slopes looked pristine. As a skilled skier, I felt at home on the intermediate runs. The familiar rush of cold wind against my face washing away my worries. That's when it happened. A flash of blonde hair, a startled yelp, and suddenly I was tumbling through the snow with a stranger. "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry." The woman's voice was warm and slightly breathless as we untangled ourselves. When I finally got a good look at her, time seemed to slow down. Bright blue eyes crinkled with amusement, and her blonde hair escaped from beneath her ski cap in wispy tendrils. "I'm Gabriella," she said, brushing snow from her jacket. "But everyone calls me Gabby." "Kira," I responded, oddly captivated by the way snowflakes clung to her eyelashes. "And technically I think I crashed into you." She laughed, a sound that seemed to echo across the snow-covered slopes. "How about we call it mutual destruction and settle this over hot chocolate? I know the best spot in the lodge." I should have said no. I had a failing restaurant to worry about. But something about her, maybe the mischievous glint in her eyes or the way she held herself with such easy confidence, made me nod. The lodge's fireplace cast a warm glow as we settled into oversized armchairs, our hot chocolates topped with ridiculous amounts of whipped cream. Gabby told me she was a food blogger, and I found myself opening up about my restaurant struggles. "A chef, huh?" She leaned forward, genuinely interested. "What made you choose Little Rock?" "It's home," I said simply. "But lately, it feels like the city's forgotten about my little place. Maybe it just needs the right person to remind them." There was something in her voice, a hint of possibility that made my heart skip. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, jumping from cooking techniques to travel stories, and before I knew it, hours had passed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the snow, I realized I hadn't thought about my restaurant problems once. Instead, I'd been mesmerized by the way Gabby's hands moved when she talked, how her eyes lit up when describing a perfect meal, and the subtle perfume that reminded me of vanilla and winter spices. We exchanged numbers under the pretense of networking, but as I drove home that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Little did I know, that chance encounter on the slopes would turn my whole world upside down, in ways I never could have imagined. A week after our ski slope encounter, I was back in my kitchen, trying to ignore the empty tables in my dining room. The memory of Gabby's laugh still echoed in my mind, but I hadn't worked up the courage to text her. What would I say? "Hey, still thinking about how perfect your smile is?" Instead, I channeled my energy into creating new dishes. That Tuesday evening, I noticed a woman dining alone, scribbling in a small notebook between bites. Something about her seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. She ordered nearly half the menu, photographing each dish discreetly with her phone. My heart raced. Food critics rarely announced themselves, and we desperately needed a good review. I poured my soul into each plate, my signature lavender-infused duck breast, the controversial deconstructed apple pie, and the seafood bisque that had once made a grown man cry. The mysterious diner stayed until closing, and I watched her leave without introducing myself, my stomach in knots. 3 days later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Chef, you need to see this!" My sous chef thrust her phone at me, displaying a viral food blog post. The headline read, "Little Rock's Hidden Gem, where culinary innovation meets soulful execution." My hands trembled as I read the review. The writer described my food with such intimate detail, such passion, that I felt exposed. Then I saw the byline, by Gabriella Sanders. The elegant woman dining alone had been Gabby in disguise. The impact was immediate. By dinner service, we had a waiting list. The phone rang constantly with reservation requests. My little restaurant, which had been on the brink of failure, was suddenly the hottest spot in Little Rock. I finally gathered the courage to text her. Sneaky. Very sneaky. Her response came quickly. A chef should be judged on their food, not their skiing abilities, though yours are impressive in both areas. I invited her to dinner, a proper thank you for the review that saved my restaurant. She arrived wearing a deep blue dress that made her eyes sparkle, and I nearly burned the risotto watching her walk through my kitchen. So, was it all an act on the slopes? I asked as we sat in my office, sharing a bottle of wine after hours. Meeting me, the hot chocolate. Gabby shook her head, her blonde hair catching the dim light. I'd been planning to review your restaurant for weeks. The ski collision was pure chance. Or maybe fate. She moved closer, and I caught that familiar scent of vanilla. Though I must admit, meeting you first made writing the review much more interesting. How so? My voice came out barely above a whisper. Because, she said, her fingers brushing mine as she reached for her wine glass. It's much harder to remain objective when you can't stop thinking about the chef. The air between us crackled with tension. I found myself staring at her lips, wondering if they would taste like the wine we'd been sharing. But before either of us could act on the electricity building between us, my sous chef burst in with a crisis involving a broken refrigeration unit. As I dealt with the emergency, Gabby slipped away, leaving only a note. Next time, let's skip the kitchen drama and just have dinner at my place. I promise not to write about it. That night, lying in bed, I realized my restaurant wasn't the only thing transformed by Gabriella Sanders. Something was shifting inside me too, something both thrilling and terrifying. The review that saved my business might just end up changing my life in ways I never expected. And despite my best efforts to maintain professional boundaries, I found myself already planning what I would cook for dinner at her place, wondering what other secrets this intriguing food blogger might be hiding behind those captivating blue eyes. Digital fame hit me like an avalanche. One minute I was just a chef trying to keep my restaurant afloat. The next I was watching myself on Gabby's vlog, demonstrating how to make my signature dishes to her thousands of followers. Just pretend the camera isn't there, Gabby had said during our first shoot, positioning her equipment in my kitchen. Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one who kept stumbling over words and accidentally flirting on camera. The secret to this sauce, I explained to the lens, trying to focus on cooking rather than how close Gabby was standing, is in the timing. I reached for the wine to deglaze the pan, but Gabby's hand brushed mine as she passed me the bottle. The resulting splash nearly set off the fire alarm. We can edit that out, she laughed, but kept it in the final cut. Her followers went wild, the comments section filling with speculation about our obvious chemistry. One viewer wrote, "The way they look at each other while cooking. I can't even." The videos became a weekly thing. Sometimes we'd film at my restaurant after hours, other times in her perfectly lit home kitchen. Views skyrocketed, especially for episodes where we cooked together. Something about our dynamic, her playful commentary mixed with my serious chef demeanor, had viewers coming back for more. But with visibility came scrutiny. Madison Chase, a rival food blogger known for her sharp tongue and sharper pen, started dropping hints about compromised objectivity in her posts. "When did food criticism become food romance?" she wrote. "Some of us still believe in journalistic integrity." The comments stung, not because they were true, well, not entirely, but because they threatened Gabby's professional reputation. I suggested we stop filming together, but Gabby wouldn't hear of it. "Let them talk," she said during one late-night editing session. "Our content speaks for itself." She was curled up on her couch, laptop balanced on her knees, looking impossibly beautiful in the blue light of the screen. The rumors intensified when we collaborated on a Valentine's Day special. Teaching viewers how to make chocolate soufflés, our hands kept meeting in the bowl of melted chocolate. The tension was palpable, even through the screen. The video went viral, but not for the recipe. Madison's response was swift and brutal. She published a scathing article questioning whether Gabby's glowing review of my restaurant had been influenced by personal interests. The insinuation was clear, and not entirely wrong, though the timeline was off. "I'm so sorry," I told Gabby over the phone that night. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Don't you dare apologize," she replied fiercely. "Madison's just jealous. Our viewers love what we do because it's real." Real. The word echoed in my mind. What we had was real, the chemistry, the connection, the way my heart raced whenever she was near. But we'd been dancing around it, hiding behind cameras and recipes. The following week's video was different. Gabby insisted on filming me making my grandmother's comfort food recipe. As I shared the story behind the dish, I caught her wiping away tears behind the camera. That footage never made it to the channel, but the moment stayed with me. Later that evening, reading through the latest batch of comments, I found myself lingering on one, "Just kiss already." Part of me wanted to reach through the screen and explain it wasn't that simple. We had careers to think about, reputations to protect. But as I watched our latest video, seeing how Gabby's eyes lit up when I praised her knife skills, how my own expressions softened whenever she spoke, I realized we weren't fooling anyone, least of all ourselves. The chemistry that made our videos so popular wasn't just for show. The question was, were we ready to face what that meant, both personally and professionally? As another notification from Madison's blog lit up my phone, I realized we might not have a choice much longer. The story was already being written for us. Maybe it was time we took control of the narrative. Late-night cooking sessions became our sanctuary. Away from the cameras, away from the comments and speculation, it was just us in my restaurant kitchen, experimenting with flavors and trying not to notice how the air seemed to crackle whenever we got too close. "Try this," I'd say, holding out a spoon of something new. Gabby would close her eyes as she tasted, and I'd find myself mesmerized by her expression, the way her lips curved into a smile when she discovered a flavor she loved. One night, as we worked on perfecting a new dessert, Gabby looked up from her notes. "Why did you become a chef?" The question was simple, but something in her tone made me pause. "I guess. I love how food brings people together," I said, stirring the caramel sauce. "It's like speaking a language everyone understands." She moved closer, watching the amber liquid swirl. "You're good at that, bringing people together. I've seen how your staff looks at you, how your customers respond to your food." Our shoulders touched, and neither of us moved away. The kitchen suddenly felt very warm. The local wine festival came around, and Gabby convinced me to attend as her +1. "For research," she claimed, but her hand lingered on my arm as we walked between vendors. We sampled wines, critiqued pairings, and somehow ended up in a heated debate about proper cheese serving temperatures. "You're impossible," she laughed, her cheeks flushed from wine and autumn air. The setting sun caught her hair, turning it to gold, and something shifted in my chest. "I'm right," I insisted, but I was barely focusing on the cheese argument anymore. We had stopped walking, standing close in a quiet corner of the festival. "Prove it," she whispered, and I couldn't tell if we were still talking about cheese. Her eyes dropped to my lips, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The kiss happened naturally, inevitably, like the perfect reduction of a sauce. Her lips tasted like the Cabernet we'd been sampling, and her hands found their way to my waist. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The festival, the crowds, the complications. Then someone dropped a wine glass nearby, and reality crashed back in. We jumped apart, both breathing heavily. A couple walked past, giving us knowing looks. "I should." Gabby started. "Yeah, me too." I agreed, though neither of us moved. The drive home was quiet, charged with unspoken words. At my door, Gabby finally spoke. "We should talk about this." "Should we?" I asked, keys jingling in my nervous hands. "You know we can't just pretend it didn't happen." "I don't want to pretend," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "But this could complicate everything, your blog, my restaurant, the show." She stepped closer, her perfume making my head spin. "Maybe some things are worth complicating." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed, another crisis at the restaurant. By the time I looked up from the message, Gabby was already walking back to her car. The next few days were torture. We tried to maintain normalcy during filming, but every accidental touch felt electric. Our usual banter was laden with double meanings. The comments section noticed, of course they did. "Is it just me, or are they different in this episode?" one viewer wrote. During our next cooking session, we managed to keep things professional until Gabby reached past me for the salt, her body pressing against mine for just a moment too long. The spice container slipped, scattering crystals across the counter. "Sorry," we both said at once, then laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous," Gabby finally said, turning to face me. "We're adults. We can figure this out." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I was tired of pretending. Tired of calculating every move, every word, every glance. But before I could say anything, my sous chef walked in, and we jumped apart like guilty teenagers. That night, lying awake, I realized we were approaching a crossroads. We could either retreat to safer ground or leap into the unknown together. The question was, were we brave enough to face what everyone else already seemed to see? The scandal broke on a Tuesday morning. I was prepping for dinner service when my phone exploded with notifications. Marcus Walsh, owner of the pretentious French bistro across town, had released evidence of what he called compromised reviews for favors. The photos were innocent enough, Gabby and me sharing coffee after filming, walking together at the wine festival, laughing in my kitchen. But Marcus's captions twisted everything. Local food critic trades positive reviews for special treatment, and the real recipe for success? Have you seen this? My sous chef thrust her phone at me, showing Madison Chase's latest blog post. She'd jumped on Marcus's allegations, adding her own speculation about the timeline of Gabby's review and our relationship. I felt sick. Not because of what they were saying about me, but because of how this could affect Gabby's career. Food criticism relies on credibility, and Marcus was trying to destroy hers. My hands shook as I dialed Gabby's number, straight to voicemail. I typed out a message. "I'm so sorry. This isn't fair to you. We should talk." The response came hours later. "Not your fault. Dealing with my editor. Stay off social media." Too late. I'd already seen hundreds of comments, ranging from supportive to vicious. Our viewers were divided, some defending us, others feeling betrayed. The worst part was that Marcus's timeline was completely wrong. Gabby's review had been honest, written before we'd even known each other properly. Then came the call from my mother. "Kira Mitchell," she said, her voice tight. "Care to explain why Mrs. Peterson just sent me a link to an article about my daughter's inappropriate relationship with another woman?" My stomach dropped. In all the chaos, I'd forgotten about this part, my traditional family, their expectations, their judgments. "Mom, it's not what you think. So you're not involved with this blogger? Because these pictures suggest otherwise." I closed my eyes, leaning against the kitchen wall. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicate it," she snapped. "This isn't you, Kira. What about that nice man from church I introduced you to?" "Mom, I'm 33. I know who I am." My voice shook but held firm. "And Gabby, she's important to me." The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice cold. "I need time to process this. Please don't come to Sunday dinner this week." The rejection stung worse than any negative review. I hung up and slid down the wall, sitting on the kitchen floor as tears threatened to fall. That evening, Marcus showed up at my restaurant, all fake concern and smarmy smiles. "Such a shame about those photos getting out," he said, examining our daily specials board. "But you know how the internet is, though. I might be persuaded to release a statement clarifying things." "Get out," I said quietly. Now, no need to be hostile. I'm offering you an opportunity to save face. All you have to do is publicly admit that your relationship with Miss Sanders influenced her review." I stood up, anger replacing despair. "That review was written before we even knew each other. Get out." He shrugged, adjusting his expensive suit. "Your choice. But remember, reputations are fragile things." After he left, I finally checked my messages. Dozens from friends and family, most expressing concern about my lifestyle choices. But one text from Gabby stood out. "My place tonight? Think we need to talk about how to handle this." I stared at my phone, wondering if the easiest solution would be to step back, let things cool down. We could claim Marcus was wrong, go our separate ways professionally. My mother would be happy, Gabby's credibility would recover, and my restaurant could focus on the food instead of gossip. But then I remembered the way Gabby's eyes lit up when she tasted something amazing, how her laugh made even the worst days better, how right it felt when we kissed at the wine festival. Was I really willing to let other people's prejudices and assumptions dictate my happiness? I grabbed my keys, texting back a simple "on my way." Sometimes the hardest choices are actually the simplest, you just have to be brave enough to make them. I found Gabby pacing in her apartment, phone pressed to her ear. "No, I won't retract the review," she was saying firmly, "because it was honest and written before. Yes, I understand the implications, but..." She noticed me and held up one finger. Her apartment smelled like comfort food. She'd been stress cooking again. A pot of what looked like her grandmother's famous soup simmered on the stove. "I quit," she suddenly announced into the phone, then hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. "Your editor?" I asked softly. She nodded, running her hands through her hair. They wanted me to distance myself from you publicly, write a statement claiming our relationship was purely professional. She laughed bitterly, as if that would fix anything. Gabby, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, she interrupted, crossing the room to stand in front of me. I'm tired of hiding, tired of calculating every move to protect other people's comfort. Her blue eyes blazed with determination. I won't apologize for how I feel about you. The next morning, we were having coffee when we heard the commotion outside. Marcus Walsh was holding an impromptu press conference on the sidewalk in front of my restaurant. The integrity of our local dining scene is at stake, he was saying to a small crowd of reporters. How can diners trust reviews when personal relationships? Oh, shut up, Marcus. Everyone turned. Gabby strode forward, her blonde hair catching the morning sun. I hurried after her, heart pounding. You want to talk about integrity? Gabby's voice carried across the crowd. Let's talk about how you offered to cater my sister's wedding for free if I gave your bistro 5 stars. Or how you try to poach staff from other restaurants with inflated salary promises you never keep. Marcus's face turned red. That's slander. No, that's truth. Something you might want to try sometime. She turned to the reporters. Yes, Kira and I are together. No, it didn't influence my review. Check the dates. And yes, I'd gladly write that same review today because her food speaks for itself. Then, in front of everyone, she took my hand and squeezed it. The crowd erupted with questions, but we were already walking away. Behind us, I could hear Marcus spluttering, trying to regain control of his narrative. That weekend, we escaped to a small cabin in the Ozarks. No phones, no social media, no crisis management. Just us, a well-stocked kitchen, and the quiet of the mountains. I've been thinking, Gabby said as we sat on the deck watching the sunset. Maybe this whole scandal is actually an opportunity. To do what? Or to be honest, about everything. She turned to face me. I love food. I love writing about it. But more than that, I love watching you create it. I love how passionate you get about proper knife technique, and how you hum when you're reducing a sauce. My heart seemed to stop, then restart at double speed. The thing is, she continued, I was falling for you long before that review. Every taste test, every late-night cooking session, every stupid argument about cheese temperature. I was falling harder. I reached for her hand, remembering all those moments. I know exactly what you mean. That night, as we cooked dinner together in the cabin's tiny kitchen, something felt different. The weight of other people's expectations had lifted. We moved around each other with familiar ease, stealing kisses between chopping vegetables and stirring sauces. Later, wrapped in blankets on the deck, Gabby showed me the comments on her latest blog post, a candid piece about authenticity in food criticism and life. The support was overwhelming. Look at this one, she said, pointing to her phone. Thank you for being brave enough to be yourselves. Your honesty makes your reviews mean even more. I pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair. So, what happens now? Now? She smiled. Now we write our own story, on our own terms, and maybe make something amazing along the way. As if on cue, the timer in the kitchen went off. Our midnight soufflés were ready. We rushed inside, laughing, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together, with the same passion we brought to everything else in our lives. The invitation arrived on expensive cardstock with gold lettering, the Southern Culinary Masters competition. My hands trembled as I read the details. Only 10 chefs selected, 3 rounds of competition, 1 winner crowned the best chef in the South. The prize? $100,000 and a feature in every major food publication. You have to do it, Gabby said, reading over my shoulder in my kitchen. We'd just finished filming our weekly video, and she was still wearing the apron I'd given her. This could change everything. I wasn't so sure. The competition was notorious for its brutal challenges and cutthroat contestants. Plus, Marcus Walsh had won 2 years ago and never let anyone forget it. What if I crash and burn? I stared at the invitation. The whole region will be watching. Gabby took my face in her hands. Listen to me. I've tasted food from the best restaurants in 30 countries. Nobody makes dishes with more heart than you do. The first round was in 3 weeks. Gabby helped me practice, playing judge and critic, pushing me to refine my techniques. Late at night, after my restaurant closed, we'd experiment with flavor combinations until the sun came up. Too safe, she'd say, tasting a sauce. Where's the Kira Mitchell spark? She was right. I was cooking scared, worried about mistakes. One night, frustrated after another practice session, I threw my towel across the kitchen. I can't do this. Really? Gabby raised an eyebrow. Because the woman who reinvented Southern cuisine and survived a public scandal seems pretty capable to me. The morning of the competition, I found a note in my knife roll. Cook with love, the rest will follow. Underneath was a perfect chocolate truffle, Gabby's secret recipe. The competition was held in a massive convention center. Camera crews swarmed everywhere, and the other chefs sized each other up like fighters before a match. Marcus was there, smirking as he unpacked his specialized equipment. Well, well, he drawled. Brought your cheerleader, I see. He nodded toward Gabby in the audience. I ignored him, focusing on setting up my station. The first challenge was announced: reimagine a classic Southern dish in 30 minutes. My hands moved automatically, muscle memory from countless practice sessions taking over. As I cooked, I could feel Gabby's presence in the audience. Every time I looked up, she was there, nodding encouragingly. When I started to rush, her silent signal reminded me to breathe. The judges came around. My heart pounded as they tasted my deconstructed shrimp and grits. The head judge's eyes widened slightly, a good sign. I made it through to the second round, then the third. Each challenge pushed me further, forced me to dig deeper into why I loved cooking in the first place. Through it all, Gabby was my anchor. The final round came down to Marcus and me. Create a 3-course meal that tells your story, the judges announced. 2 hours on the clock. I closed my eyes, thinking of late nights in my kitchen, of Gabby's laughter, of all the moments that had led me here. Then I started cooking. My appetizer was a refined version of the first dish I'd ever made Gabby. The main course incorporated techniques I'd learned from my grandmother, updated with modern twists. And dessert? A complex chocolate creation inspired by that first day at the ski lodge. Time ran out. The judges tasted both meals in silence. Marcus's cooking was technically perfect, but something was missing. Chef Mitchell, the head judge, said, "Your food tells a story of transformation, of finding courage to be authentic. Each bite reveals another layer of meaning." The room held its breath. "Congratulations, you are our new Southern culinary master." The applause was deafening, but all I could see was Gabby's face in the crowd, tears streaming down her cheeks as she cheered. Marcus stormed off stage, but I barely noticed. Later that night, after the interviews and photographs, Gabby and I sat in my empty restaurant, sharing the last of my competition dessert. "You know what this means, right?" she said, licking chocolate from her spoon. "You've officially outgrown my food critic status." I pulled her close. "Guess you'll have to find other reasons to hang around my kitchen." "Oh," she smiled, kissing me softly. "I can think of plenty." Thanksgiving loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. After my competition win, my mother had finally called, suggesting I might bring my friend to dinner. Her tone made "friend" sound like a dirty word. "We don't have to go," Gabby said, watching me stress chop vegetables in my kitchen. "We could start our own tradition." But I knew we had to face this eventually. My family's Victorian house in the historic district of Little Rock had always been the gathering place for holidays. Missing it would only delay the inevitable. The morning of Thanksgiving, I stood in front of my mirror, changing outfits for the third time. Gabby caught me from behind, wrapping her arms around my waist. "The blue sweater," she said decisively. "It brings out your eyes." We arrived exactly on time, bearing 3 dishes, including my award-winning chocolate dessert. My mother opened the door, her smile tight. "Welcome," she said, hugging me briefly before extending a stiff hand to Gabby. "Miss Sanders." The house smelled like childhood, sage, turkey, and my grandmother's secret stuffing recipe. But the familiar comfort was overshadowed by the tension crackling through the air. My Aunt Margaret cornered me in the kitchen. "Darling, is this really necessary? Think of your poor mother's bridge club." I gripped the counter, knuckles white. "Aunt Margaret, I'm not discussing this." In the living room, I could hear my younger cousins whispering, stealing glances at Gabby. She sat perfectly poised, answering my father's stilted questions about her work with grace I didn't know I possessed. Then came dinner. 16 people crowded around my mother's prized mahogany table, the good china gleaming under chandelier light. Grace was said, with pointed emphasis on traditional family values. "So," my Uncle Robert boomed, "when did you decide to become, you know?" Robert, my mother hissed. What? We're all wondering. Gabby's hand found mine under the table. I decided to become a food critic after college, she answered smoothly. Though I suppose my love for good food started much earlier. I barely suppressed a snort at her deliberate misunderstanding. My youngest cousin giggled. The tension eased slightly as people began eating. Food had always been our family's language of love, and despite everything, they couldn't deny my contributions to the meal were exceptional. Then my mother brought out her photos albums. Look how pretty you were in your prom dress, she sighed, showing Gabby a picture of 16-year-old me, uncomfortable in pink taffeta. She's beautiful now, Gabby said firmly. Silence fell. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she turned the page. Later, while helping with dishes, my father surprised me. Your cranberry sauce was different this year. Orange zest and a hint of rosemary, I explained cautiously. He nodded. Change isn't always bad, I suppose. The evening wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences and veiled comments. But as we were leaving, my mother pressed a container into Gabby's hands. Leftover stuffing, she said stiffly. It's Kira's favorite. 2 days later, we drove to Memphis for Thanksgiving with Gabby's family. The contrast was stark. Her parents' modern apartment was filled with laughter and acceptance. Rainbow flag magnets decorated the fridge, and nobody blinked when we held hands. Mom wants your recipe for that chocolate thing, Gabby's sister announced, dropping onto the couch beside us. She says it's better than sex. Sarah, their mother scolded, but she was laughing. That evening, Gabby's father pulled out his guitar, and we all sang badly to Beatles songs. Looking around at these people who had welcomed me without question, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Later, curled up in Gabby's old bedroom, surrounded by her teenage posters and debate trophies, she asked, "Are you okay? About your family?" I thought about my mother's stuffing gesture, my father's quiet acceptance of change, my giggling young cousin who'd asked for cooking tips. They're trying, I said finally. It's not perfect, but they're trying. Small steps, Gabby murmured, pulling me closer. Besides, I added, maybe we can start some traditions of our own. She smiled in the darkness. Like what? Like always making my competition dessert for holidays, like singing bad Beatles songs, like being ourselves. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, dusting Memphis in white. Inside, in this room full of Gabby's past and our future, I felt truly thankful for the first time all week. Fame has a way of complicating everything. After winning the Southern Culinary Masters competition, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. The latest call came from a sleek-voiced television producer. "We want you to host your own cooking show," she said. "Modern Southern cuisine with a twist, your personality, your recipes, your vision." The catch? It would film in Atlanta, 3 hours away from Little Rock, 3 hours away from Gabby. "It's an amazing opportunity," Gabby said when I told her, but I caught the slight tremor in her voice. We were in her apartment, surrounded by the Sunday papers she used for research. Speaking of research, Gabby had her own problems. Comments on her blog had become increasingly hostile, questioning her objectivity on any restaurant review. "Sleeping with a chef has compromised her judgment," one critic wrote. "Maybe I should stop reviewing restaurants altogether," she mused one evening, closing her laptop with a frustrated sigh. "Focus on travel writing instead." "Don't you dare," I said, pulling her away from her desk. "You're the most honest critic I know. That's why they're threatened." But the pressure was mounting. The TV producers wanted an answer, giving me 2 weeks to decide. Meanwhile, Gabby's editor was pushing her to take on a national assignment that would have her traveling for months. "Think about it," her editor had said. "Distance would prove your independence." We tried to maintain normalcy. I experimented with new recipes while Gabby wrote at my kitchen counter. But the uncertain future hung over us like smoke from a burning pan. "What if," I started one night, then stopped. What if what? What if we're being selfish, holding each other back? Gabby put down her pen. "Is that what you think we're doing?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. The producers again, sweetening the deal with a significant salary increase. I let it go to voicemail. That weekend, I had a private event at the restaurant, a wedding reception. The bride had requested my competition-winning menu. As I worked in the kitchen, I overheard the father of the bride giving a toast. Sometimes, he said, success isn't about what you achieve, but what you're willing to sacrifice to keep what matters most. Later that night, I found Gabby in her home office, surrounded by travel guides and sticky notes. She'd been researching locations for her potential national assignment. I got another call from the show, I said, perching on her desk. And? I told them no. She looked up sharply. Kira, you can't pass this up because of me. I'm not, I said, realizing as I spoke that it was true. I'm passing it up because I love my restaurant. Because I love creating dishes that make people's eyes light up. Because I love our life here. Gabby was quiet for a long moment. Then she started tearing up her travel notes. What are you doing? Making a decision, she said. I'm staying too. But not for you, for me. Because I love discovering new restaurants in our city. Because I love being known as a critic people can trust. Because I love our life here too. But your editor can find someone else to travel the country. I'll build my credibility my way, through honest reviews and good writing. Besides, she added with a smile, someone needs to keep the local restaurant scene honest. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. We'd chosen us, not just our relationship, but our individual dreams that had somehow become intertwined. The next morning, I woke up early to find Gabby already at her laptop, typing furiously. What are you working on? An article about how personal connections affect professional judgment. About how knowing the story behind the food can deepen appreciation without compromising honesty. I read over her shoulder, smiling at her words. Sometimes the best view isn't from a safe distance, but from right in the heart of the kitchen. That evening, as we cooked dinner together in my restaurant's kitchen after hours, I realized something. Success wasn't about having the biggest platform or the most prestigious title. It was about being true to yourself and your passions, even when that meant taking the road less televised. Gabby had been acting strange for weeks. She'd disappear for hours, claiming to be working on reviews, but her blog posts weren't showing up with their usual frequency. Her phone calls would drop to whispers when I entered the room, and she'd quickly close her laptop whenever I came near. Something was up, but I was too preoccupied with my own secret to investigate further. I'd been testing and refining a new recipe, something special I planned to serve only once, for one specific person. Then came the mysterious invitation. Join me for a private tasting menu, it read in Gabby's elegant handwriting. Saturday, 8 p.m., wear something nice. I arrived at her apartment to find it transformed. Fairy lights twinkled from every surface, and the air was heavy with familiar aromas that made my heart skip. Is that? I started. The hot chocolate from the ski lodge, Gabby confirmed, emerging from the kitchen wearing a deep blue dress that made her eyes sparkle, where it all began. The coffee table had been converted into an intimate dining space, complete with my grandmother's china, which I knew had been stored at my parents' house. How did you... Your mom helped, she said softly. She's been surprisingly enthusiastic about tonight. Each course was a recreation of a significant moment in our relationship. The appetizer was her version of the first dish I'd ever cooked for her. The soup was from the night of our first kiss at the wine festival. The main course was her interpretation of my competition-winning dish. You've been practicing these in secret, I realized, watching her plate each dish with careful precision. For weeks, she admitted. Your sous chef has been teaching me after hours. I wanted to show you that I understand your language, the way you speak through food. Between courses, she shared memories. Little moments I hadn't realized she'd treasured as much as I had. The time I stress-baked 3 cakes at midnight. Our first grocery shopping trip together. The day we decided to face the scandal head-on. Just when I thought I couldn't be more moved, she brought out dessert. A perfect recreation of my chocolate competition dessert. It took me 15 attempts, she confessed. I never knew tempering chocolate could be so frustrating. I took a bite. It wasn't exactly like mine, it was better. Because she'd made it her own, adding subtle hints of the flavors she knew I loved. There's something in the center, I said, finding a small folded note. My hands trembled as I opened it. Marry me? I looked up to find Gabby on one knee, holding a ring that caught the fairy lights like stars. I had this whole speech prepared, she said, her voice shaking slightly, about how you've changed the way I taste food, the way I see the world, the way I love. But really, it comes down to this. I want to spend my life cooking with you, critiquing with you, living with you. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Walsh. Heard about an opening at a prestigious Chicago restaurant. Interested? I silenced my phone without looking at it. Some opportunities weren't opportunities at all. They were just distractions from what really mattered. Yes, I said, pulling Gabby to her feet. Yes to all of it. She slipped the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, just like us. Later, curled up on her couch, surrounded by empty plates and happy exhaustion, she asked, "Was the food really okay?" I kissed her softly. It was perfect, but I have one complaint. Oh? You stole my thunder. I reached into my bag, pulling out a small box. I was planning to propose next week. I've been working on a special menu and everything. She laughed, tears in her eyes. Cook it for me anyway? For the rest of our lives, I promised. The fairy lights twinkled, casting soft shadows on the walls. Tomorrow we'd face the world again, reviews to write, meals to cook, a wedding to plan. But tonight, in this moment, we had everything we needed. Good food, great love, and the promise of countless meals to come. Our wedding went viral, though not in the way most do. No, our celebration became an internet sensation because of the food, specifically the way we chose to tell our story through each carefully crafted course. The ceremony was held in my restaurant, transformed by thousands of tiny lights that reminded us of that magical proposal night. Each table became its own intimate dining experience, with handwritten menus explaining the significance of every dish. "Is that hot chocolate being served at a wedding?" one guest whispered. "With homemade marshmallows," I confirmed, watching as servers carried out the welcome drinks. Each cup told the story of our first meeting, that snowy day at the ski lodge. My mother, who'd finally come around, cried during the ceremony, though she later claimed it was because of the perfectly executed sauce on the fish course. Gabby's family added their own touches, including her grandmother's secret recipe cards as place settings. The food bloggers in attendance, and there were many, couldn't help themselves. Photos started appearing online before we'd even cut the cake. "The most delicious love story ever told," one headline read. But the real story wasn't in the perfectly plated dishes or the expertly paired wines. It was in the quiet moments between courses. The way Gabby's hand found mine under the table, the shared glances that said more than words ever could. Our first dance was interrupted by a small kitchen fire, because of course it was. We wouldn't have had it any other way. Gabby helped me salvage the final dessert course, her white dress smudged with chocolate, both of us laughing as we worked side by side in the kitchen, just like always. The video of that moment went viral too. "This is what real love looks like," the comments said. "Not perfect, not staged, just us being us." A month after the wedding, we launched our joint venture, a cooking school combined with a supper club. The concept was simple, intimate dinners, where we taught people not just how to cook, but how to tell their own stories through food. Today's lesson is about courage, I'd say to our students, demonstrating how to make that first soufflé that had brought us together. Sometimes the scariest recipes turn out to be the most rewarding. Gabby would add her perspective as a critic, teaching people how to truly taste food, how to understand the story behind each bite. Our different approaches complemented each other perfectly, just like we did. The classes became so popular we had to start a waiting list. The chef and the critic, cooking with heart, became a local phenomenon, then a regional one. We even had a cookbook in the works. One evening, after a particularly successful class, we found ourselves alone in the kitchen, just like that first late-night cooking session so long ago. "Remember when you were worried about mixing business with pleasure?" Gabby teased, stealing a taste of sauce from a pot I was stirring. "Remember when you used to review restaurants instead of teaching people how to critique them?" I countered, pulling her close. I like this better," she murmured. "Though I still write reviews, someone has to keep you on your toes." And she did. Her latest review of my restaurant, written with full disclosure of our relationship, was both glowing and honest, acknowledging the few dishes that needed work while celebrating the innovations that kept our regular customers coming back. As we locked up that night, walking hand in hand through the quiet streets of Little Rock, I realized something. Success wasn't measured in Michelin stars or viral videos. It wasn't even measured in perfect recipes or glowing reviews. Success was this: building something together, creating not just meals but memories, teaching others to find their own stories through food. Success was knowing that every night, no matter what challenges we faced, we'd end up here, in our kitchen, cooking together, tasting life's moments one bite at a time. "What's for dinner?" Gabby asked as we reached home. I smiled, thinking of the new recipe I'd been working on. "Something experimental. Want to help me test it?" "Always," she said, and I knew she meant more than just the food. And so our story continues, one meal at a time, proving that sometimes the best recipes are the ones we write together.